Sega and Gearbox's Aliens-based FPS. Wait, actually, Sega and Gearbox's Call of Duty Aliens FPS thingy-majig is the perfect example of Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford being unbelievably bad at his job. It's also the perfect case of Sega maybe not being very good at picking up on gaming trends. Yes, I'm looking at you. But okay, let's break down what went wrong with Aliens Colonial Marines and maybe along the way figure out why Randy Pitchford still haunts my fucking dreams. The story of Aliens Colonial Marines begins in December of 2006 when Sega purchased the rights to make games on the Aliens franchise. Now, this decision really already boggles the mind because it's not like the Aliens franchise was like popular at this point. By this point, the last movie had come out in 1997 and wasn't particularly well received either. It was alright, nobody loved it, nobody hated it, it was just kinda meh. But for whatever reason, Sega felt that the Aliens franchise was hip and cool, so brother, we're gonna ride this train. There was one other problem with this deal, however. Sega did not think about what they were actually going to do with the franchise, because apparently that was something they didn't bother to figure out or whatever. So they just announced it with no plans of what they were actually going to do with the license. Which is kind of a problem because normally when you, announce something that you acquired, you want to know what you're doing with it. Most importantly, your fans want to know what you're doing with the IP that they love. But Sega's no normal company. They're Sega, so they did not give a flying fuck what they should or shouldn't do. The actual development of Aliens Colonial Marines didn't even start until 2007. Another game that would also begin development at this time was an RPG in the Aliens franchise by Obsidian Entertainment. Some of you that are fans of the Aliens franchise may be asking me, well, what happened to this RPG? I don't remember an RPG coming out from Obsidian Entertainment on the Aliens franchise. And to that, I say breathe, guys. Let me get there, okay? Stop being so impatient. Give me a minute. The initial prototype of Aliens Colonial Marines would be done by a company known as Demerge Studios. Demerge Studios is honestly not going to be referenced very often, like at all, so you don't need to remember them. They're most important due to their initial efforts with the prototype, and they helped Gearbox with some of the online networking and shit around 2007 to 2010. This part of Alien Colonial Marines development was unbelievably unproductive. Gearbox at this point was busy with Borderlands, so they kind of had their hands full with a game that, to them, was, let's be real, more important than Sega's stupid FPS thing. Due to this, the game was being worked on by a very, very tiny team that was mostly using the Borderlands style to bring the characters to life, which is kind of problematic when you're making an Aliens game. It also doesn't help that a huge amount of this time being used in pre-production was spent on useless things like the lighting to make the xenomorphs look good. And for my video game geeks out there, that's an oversimplification. What they were actually doing was making a pretty complex renderer to make the xenomorphs look good with the lighting, but like, nobody cares. They were so busy on Borderlands because they knew that when Borderlands was finished, they were going to make more money on Borderlands than they would make when Aliens Colonial Marines was finished, so like they couldn't be asked to do the work. But from 2007 to 2009, the game made pretty much no progress. Even for the pre-production stage, the game was moving unbelievably slowly. Around 2009, Sega was very, very, very not happy with the fact that their FPS game that they love so much was nothing more than a tech demo. So this is where things get a little rocky because through my research and through asking sources for comment and a bunch of other things, I haven't really been able to get a definitive answer on what happened during this time. But based on what I was able to find and based on what I've been told, Sega around this time was considering canceling one of their projects. And to my understanding, before Borderlands came out, that game was going to be Aliens Colonial Marines. However, after Borderlands came out in 2009 to a smash success and everyone loving the game, Sega wanted the people from the Borderlands franchise on the box. So instead of canceling the shiny, beautiful FPS that was basically nothing, they turned to the lonely RPG and Obsidian Entertainment and said, no, stop doing what you're doing, get out. And then they canceled the whole fucking project because why would we get a good RPG instead of an FPS? I mean, Lord fucking help me. But okay, we canceled the RPG, so we're gonna turn to Gearbox, Borderlands is done, and we're gonna get this thing done. And that is precisely when Randy Pitchford walked in and said, wait, we're still working on that fucking Aliens Colonial Marine shit, dude? No, we're getting a Borderlands 2 game out the door. Even after Sega chose their game over the RPG, Gearbox could not give a flying fuck about this game. Actually, Gearbox somehow ignored it even more during this period than they did previously. previously. Randy Pitchford, for whatever reason, just fucking hated everything about this game. I mean, I'm not even joking either. You know what games Randy Pitchford chose over Aliens Colonial Marines? Duke Nukem Forever and Borderlands 2. Duke Nukem Forever. In 2009, Sega decided to compromise with Gearbox and said, you know what, if you won't make the game, then pretend you did and give it to somebody else. Who is our unlucky company that got chosen for this? Timegate Studios. Timegate Studios was coming off of another project, so while they were finishing that one up, they began pre-production on Aliens Colonial Marines. In 2010, Timegate began full-time development of the game. This is precisely when I believe Timegate Studios realized that they picked the wrong fucking studio to work with. Why was this? Well, this is because when they looked at what work had been done by Gearbox, they realized, well, basically nothing had been done. This is unconfirmed, but I believe this is precisely when developers at the company started weeping. What did exactly Gearbox actually get done, though? Well, they had some unrelated assets that is unconfirmed, but I had to guess is probably from Borderlands, and then the light system. That was it. If you're waiting for anything else, that is everything Gearbox did in 2 years. Ah, Randy, this is why I love him so much. You might be saying to yourself, but okay, finally a confident studio's behind it, they have control over the project, they're the primary developer, and to that, I'd say you're right on only one aspect. They were the primary developer, but that did not mean that they did not have to take everything through Gearbox and Sega or God to strike you down. Everything, and I mean literally everything, had to be run through Gearbox, and then Gearbox would run it through Sega. But why would they do that? Aren't they just purposely slowing the game down? Why would Sega want to do that? Well, it turns out they weren't purposely doing this very slow system. As it turns out, by 2010, there still wasn't a fully properly finished script for the game. So while Timegate was trying to make cutscenes and develop the game further, they would have to then go back to old cutscenes they had thought they already finished and redo them because the script had changed. To make things even worse, there was disagreements about the future of the game. Timegate Studios, for pretty obvious reasons, said, hey guys, I think we should focus on the Xenomorphs because, you know, we're working on a fucking Aliens game because we're not dumb. And Sega then jumped in and said, well, you might not be dumb, but I'm fucking stupid, so no, I want this game to be more like Call of Duty. Who wants to shoot Xenomorphs in a fucking Aliens game that's primarily about Xenomorphs because they're the main fucking premise of the movie? You want to shoot other Marines. Yeah, that's right. Sega wanted more Marines and less Xenomorphs. So what was the fucking point of buying the license in the first place? I mean, I'd fucking whatever. To be fair to Gearbox and Timegate, they opposed the decision and did try to fight back, but ultimately this is Sega's game, so Sega just said, fuck you, I'm gonna make Call of Duty but in space. And who knows? I mean, that's revolutionary for the time because, I mean, Call of Duty might have taken a thing or two. This was happening around the 2010 to 2011 window, and with everything happening, Timegate Studios, I mean, was probably begging that they could just fucking quit at this point. Timegate Studios had to be running mental. I mean, they had to keep redoing things they had done, they had to continue to optimize, and they were trying their best, but let's be real, it was a fucking disaster. They were stuck between two incompetent messes. I mean, Gearbox with Randy Pitchford, Sega being Sega, it was a disaster no matter what they did. And that's when Gearbox said, you know what we need to do? We need to start selling everybody on this game no matter what, even if it's not completely working at all. Now I know where CD Projekt Red got the idea for Cyberpunk. I mean, it's a carbon copy. Randy Pitchford went to Timegate and said, we're going to need a demo. And Timegate simply said, well, we're not ready. We can't even get the game to fucking work properly, and you want us to give you a demo? That didn't matter, though, because Randy Pitchford, well, he didn't really give a fuck. So he went to them, said, amp everything up to 5,000, but don't disclose the fact that this isn't how the game will actually look in any way, shape, or form, and even if it's not even possible. So after all of Timegate's problems, Randy said, you know what, I don't give a flying fuck. Let's put out that demo, let's put unrealistic expectations on the game, and worst case scenario, we don't live up to the hype and we just leave with a bag, and that's basically what they decided to do. This E3 demo basically sold everybody that was on the fence about buying this game. I mean, it looked fantastic, although maybe a little bit too good. It looked great, so people wanted the game after this. But after the E3 demo, Timegate Studios went back, they scaled everything the fuck back down, and got back to work. From 2011 to 2012, nothing changed. Timegate continued to struggle with optimization, continued to struggle with Sega and Gearbox wanting unrealistic changes, and other massive headaches that just continued to build on top of the fact that the game was not really a game. After 2011, going into 2012, Borderlands 2 would finally release, as well as Duke Nukem Forever, meaning finally Gearbox's slate is clean. They don't have any other obligations. So Gearbox went to Timegate and said, let me see what you're doing and let me see what you've gotten done so I can take over the project. This is the exact moment that Gearbox realized Timegate Studios might be really bad at their jobs. Why, you may be asking? Because Timegate Studios, throughout this entire period, was yet to get the PS3 to actually run the game. Yes, after 2 years, Timegate Studio was unable to get the game to work on the PS3. That's not good. That's no good. I don't know how little Gearbox and Sega were checking in with them, but the fact that it not running on the PS3 went unnoticed this entire time is that just can't happen. Gearbox then turned to Sega and said, hey, the game is in a pretty rough state. And Sega said, we don't really give a fuck. Just get the game done at this point. So Gearbox buckled down and said, you know what, we gotta just get the game done. And by Gearbox just getting the game done, I mean Gearbox made a full fucking reset. Just keep in mind, this was just a year away from the cannot move release date of February 11th, 2013. Because, oh my god, if that moved, Sega might bust your fucking balls. But at the same time, that may not be true. This is where the story gets a little bit confusing, so try to stay with me. Randy Pitchford claims that 20 to 25% of the game was contributed by Timegate Studios. Meanwhile, Timegate developers argue that it's more along the lines of 50% was done by Timegate. I've heard from other people that the game, as I said, was a full reset. I reached out to a couple developers to hopefully get a solid answer, but nobody was able to get back to me in time for this video. So, yeah, shit was kind of fucked. Nobody really knows what happened, but for this video, we're going to say that Timegate contributed 20% and Gearbox did the other 80% because that's really all we have to go off of. But at the same time, the game was just a year from releasing, and given the state it launched in, I say that Timegate most likely did 50% of the work while Gearbox finished up the other 50%. But at the same time, the only person in any sort of power was, unfortunately, Randy Pitchford, so we're going with what Randy Pitchford said. 80% Gearbox, 20% Timegate, let's move the fuck on. So from 2012 to the launch in 2013, Gearbox got down to work, kept working on the game, and to be frank, it kind of went smoothly. There was nothing outrageous happening during this time period. I mean, it was just Gearbox working on the game, although it was probably not very good and isn't very good. Even though I don't like doing this, we're going to skip this whole year because, again, nothing really happened. So just keep in mind that when I skip from 2012 to 2013, Gearbox was the one working on the game, and that's all that was happening. A couple weeks from launch, Gearbox had a little bit of a problem. They were heavily criticized for the fact that there was no female characters. Just want to throw that in there because I don't think Gearbox gave a flying fuck about female characters when they were making this game. On February 11th, 2013, Gearbox and Sega officially released Aliens Colonial Marines. And it was fucking terrible. The game was buggy, the AI was stupid, the gunplay was boring. I mean, it was a disaster. The creative decision at Sega, big brain move to add less xenomorphs was obviously not liked because why the fuck would you do it? It's so fucking stupid. But that was the least of their problems at the time because people then started comparing the demo, which was quote unquote
the actual gameplay.
Shout out Randy Pitchford, and the actual gameplay. And I guess for some reason, I mean, maybe Randy didn't think about this, but people opened their fucking eyes and realized that, wait a minute, we were lied to! If you were wondering how bad this game could actually be, well, one smart man on the internet once noticed in the Aliens Colonial Marines code that there was something wrong. One letter was out of place. That letter was an A. One singular A caused the entire AI to be fucked. You may be asking, okay, why though? Well, because the entire backbone of the AI was this line of code. Attach pawn to tether. Tether is not a fucking word. If you remove the A, it's attach pawn to tether. That is the correct fucking word. So the Gearbox QA department is either really bad at their fucking jobs or they were unbelievably rushed, because I don't understand how you miss one day the AI is working fine and the next some dumbass put an A next to tether. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Aliens Colonial Marines' downright stupid development, except no, it isn't, because that would be too easy. In 2013, two gamers filed a lawsuit against Sega and Gearbox for falsely advertising Colonial Marines, which obviously they did. Sega accused Gearbox of doing it, while Gearbox accused Sega of doing it. Ultimately, it didn't matter who blamed who, because Sega ended up paying out a whopping $1.25 million, and in return, Gearbox was dropped from the lawsuit. You might be wondering, well, how the fuck does that work, seeing how Gearbox didn't pay anything? Well, because that's Randy Pitchford doing Randy Pitchford. I mean, somehow getting away with horrible things and nobody gives a fuck. Then, Gearbox came out and said that Sega owed them millions of dollars for what they spent on the game that Sega was supposed to pay back. Sega then said they didn't owe them anything and that the initial payment was made up front for the game's development. They also claimed, and probably rightfully so, that Gearbox was mishandling funds that Sega had given them before. Therefore, Sega did not owe them anything. All of this could have been avoided if Gearbox just gave Aliens Colonial Marines a little bit more attention throughout its development time. This also could have been avoided if Sega would have just chosen the goddamn RPG from Obsidian fucking Entertainment. Gearbox is just not the right move. Stop working with Randy fucking Pitchford, please, for the love of God. Now, some people argued that maybe Aliens Colonial Marines and maybe Aliens as a franchise is just not meant for the video game sphere. And to that, I say, look at this, and then look at this. Two solid, if not really good games that both use the IP. So, what happened to all companies involved with this horrendous game? Well, after the game's release, Gearbox released Battleborn, Borderlands 3, and the new Tales from the Borderlands. Oh yeah, and they also made Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which I actually honestly forgot was a video game until I just looked it up. So a home run with Borderlands 3, and then 3 strikeouts ever since. In my humble opinion, Borderlands 3 was the last good game that Gearbox has worked on. As many of you are probably aware, Sega's doing pretty well. I mean, they're doing alright. And Timegate Studios, seeing how none of you have probably heard of them outside of this, did not make it. They would shut their doors after the game launched in 2013, and that was the end of their run. Unfortunately, they could not make it out of what a disaster fire this game was. And this is the saddest part of the story, in my opinion, because I mean, they were just a middleman stuck between two big companies being fucking idiots. But at the end of the day, that's how the gaming industry goes. I hope you all enjoyed this hilariously bad development cycle of the game. Aliens Colonial Marines will join Duke Nukem Forever, LA Noire, and Anthem in the gaming graveyard. I'll be posting these every month, or maybe not. I mean, I really don't know. We'll see how it ends up playing out, but for now, expect them every month. Keep posted on what is coming out in my YouTube posts and on my Twitter or in my Instagram link in bio. If you like this video, go to the Gaming Graveyard playlist that I have set up and watch some more. They're all great videos in my opinion, and I think you would enjoy them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, as again, that really helps. Comment down below what I should do next, and without further ado, I will leave you people alone.
How you ballin', boy, you not a starter. I only sip on Fiji water. Turn your block to Pearl Harbor. TJ Dizzle Snow go